I would even say that it shouldn't even be thinking about saving time. It should be about optimizing time. Because I think that the biggest, fastest time optimizations isn't necessarily saving time, but it's optimizing time. So think about all the time that is just dead space, wasted time. The back of an Uber where you're doing nothing, or a walk and you're doing nothing. Now, sometimes it's good to do nothing. So I'm not saying every second needs to be filled. But if you're not getting joy from what you're doing and you're not doing something useful, then I have an issue with it. If you're not getting joy from the nothing, then I'm always wondering, how can we repurpose that nothing with something of value? And so one quick thing you could do is have your team send pre-recorded videos like Loom videos. Rather than having long meetings, maybe you could shorten your meetings by 15 minutes. And the asynchronous part, they send you Loom videos. And now you free up 15 minutes on your calendar. And now you make better use of that dead time that we all inevitably have.
Greetings and welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. I am your host, Espen. Today I'm joined by Nick Sonnenberg, an entrepreneur, columnist, guest lecturer at Columbia University, and someone that I'm really excited to talk about specifically in business strategy. Okay, so he's the best-selling author of the book Come Up for Air, which is how teams can leverage systems and tools to stop drowning in work. He's also the founder and the CEO of Leverage, which we'll talk a little bit about today, a leading operational efficiency consultancy that helps companies implement what he calls the CPR framework for business efficiency. Nick has a lot of experience in business. He's very pragmatic. He's got experience from Wall Street to left, right, and center. Today, I really want to go deep on business efficiency. I want to talk about how we can understand business, run a company you run as a well-oiled machine. What is efficiency and how can we streamline things? So I want to say special welcome to the show. Nick, how are you today, mate?
Thanks for having me. I'm awesome.
That's good. Thanks for jumping on. I know you're big on strategy and you're big on efficiency. And I want to talk about a little bit about why you wrote the book, Come Up for Air. Can you tell us a little bit about what the book is about and why you wrote it, please?
So what the book is about, it's really the playbook that you can read and you can give to your team so that everyone's aligned on how to think about working together from a systems and technology standpoint. If you think about how work is today versus 10, 20 years ago, there's a whole bunch of new tools and ways of work. Remote is a lot more popular. It's no longer just Outlook and Gmail and text message. Now you've got Slack, Microsoft Teams, Asana. There's a million tools that are super, super powerful, but no one's ever been taught when and how to use it. So if you have tried rolling this out or you've tried using it with your team, if you don't align your team and invest in the training with these tools, everyone's got a different algorithm in their head of what the purpose is, when to use it, when not to use it. And it creates what I call in the book a scavenger hunt. Did Espen text me, or was that in a group chat, or was that in a channel, or was that in Asana? Well, I know that he likes Slack, but Nick likes email and it just works hard enough. And what we found is no one's got a consistent way of thinking about it. It's left up to the individual, which is the wrong approach. So I wrote this book to help organizations, and I say organizations because it could be for-profit, nonprofit, baseball team, cryptocurrency. Everyone's got very similar needs when it comes to foundational level of how to operate and how to work together, and certain needs in terms of everyone needs to communicate. Every organization has tasks and work that needs to get done, as well as every organization, you have standard operating procedures. You have processes for how you operate. So I kind of fell into this space, circling back to that question, almost out of necessity. I had a bad business partner breakup, almost went bankrupt. I was working, 16 plus hour days. By the time you put out all the fires, it was like, when the hell do I actually get to fix things? And doing a bit of a time audit and coming from an engineering background, I like to build things, fix things. And I was always really more interested in how to run a business than what the business was. And I was already into automation and doing clever things like that early on, like when no one was kind of using a lot of these tools. But still, with all that, during this moment, I was completely drowning in work. And one day I kind of just sat back and did a bit of a time audit, not on like a granular, I spent 5 minutes in this and 10 minutes in this, but more holistically, what are the buckets where things are getting eaten up? And I kind of realized in that time audit, there were 3 buckets. One bucket was communication. By the time I responded to my clients and team, the whole day was basically shot. So that was like first bucket, is the C. The next was what I call planning. I couldn't answer basic questions like, what did my team get done that I asked them to get done? What's the status of this work? I would have to go back and asking communication tools and chase people to get those answers. And I just felt that there was a better way than having to chase people. How can I just in 2 clicks answer anything in the business, not have to wait for people, not have to waste their time, not have to be stressing out and keeping things in my head. David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done, great guy, he's a friend. He has this concept that your brain's for having ideas, not holding ideas. And so, how can you have systems so that you never have to you should never have to hold things in your head. It should be light so that it's nimble to have these ideas. But when you don't have these systems and processes, your brain has to be filled clinging on to things to not forget. And that's suboptimal. And then the third bucket are for resources. I was already pretty good at that. Had I not been, we would have for sure gone bankrupt. But where can people just self-serve and answer questions for themselves? You've invested a lot of time and energy and resources figuring something out. You want that to be an asset. I'm always thinking about are we creating an asset or am I just putting a Band-Aid and temporarily solving things? Even today, literally today, I was talking to my team and I was like, look, I could tell you how I would do that, but I'd rather spend an extra 10%. And how do we build an asset out of this? So instead of just fixing it, how can we figure out an asset so it goes into a custom bot, for example, or whatever? Anyway, back to the R for resources. That's all about documenting your knowledge. And so there's these 3 buckets: communication, planning, resources, CPR. And then once I figured that out, things started turning around. People then, after seeing my turnaround, started reaching out, asking me to consult. So I got to work with Tony Robbins, Poopery, Ethereum. It didn't matter if you were the world's #1 coach or a cryptocurrency or a poop spray. Everyone benefited from kind of this CPR framework. And so I decided to pivot the company to what it is today. So my company, you mentioned Leverage. We do operational efficiency, training and consulting. And the core of it is this CPR framework. And that's the core of this book, Come Up for Air.
I love this concept. Where does one start though? You mentioned, for example, I did some research on some of your work yesterday, and I could see that you talk about, how to get to a zero inbox. You don't want to have a backlog of communication that's waiting. I saw one of the videos you did, and you said something like, often when you work with clients, you realize that there are emails that have not been responded to, and one of those emails is often worth $10,000 and or more. With the CPR approach, where do we start? Let's say you run a company, it's doing $250,000, it's doing $10 million, it doesn't really matter. Where would one start to streamline communication?
So most of the time, the starting point should be to streamline communication, because that's usually the biggest inefficiency. But really the start is, where should you start? And it's and the thinking process or the algorithm that goes through my head. And when I do sales calls or speak to prospects, the conversation I usually have is it's around ROT, return on time. The starting point should always be, where can we maximize your return on time? Oftentimes that's communication. Oftentimes it's email within communication. Right. And I divide communication into 3 buckets: personal, which would be text; external, which would be email; internal, which would be Microsoft Teams or Slack. So normally communication, and more specifically the sub bucket of external communication, email, is usually the start. But there's some people, I've spoke to a prospect this week, they get 20 emails a day. Cool. You could probably benefit from our email training, but maybe there's some other places we could start where you're going to have a higher ROT. Talk to other people, they get 100 emails a day, 200 emails a day. Most likely go through our inbox zero program, probably change your life. Literally. So I think the starting point should always be around, how do you maximize ROT? So take our email program. On average, if someone's getting around 50 to 100 emails a day, they'll save 3 to 5 hours a week with that program. And the time commitment is about 3 hours, on the high end 5 hours. So if you think about the ROT of that, over the course of a year, if you're saving 5 hours a week, that's 250 hours of time savings in year 1 for a 3 to 5 hour time investment. It's like a 50 to 1 return. And then for the rest of your life, you've just magically got 5 hours back. It's a pretty high return on time. It's going to be hard to beat that one. You know what I mean? Other things, not that it's not important, might take 10 hours and you might save 3 a week. But still, if you do the math, it's 150 hours a year on a 10 hour to 15 to 1. They're still incredible things. And it's not that you should do one or the other. You should do both. It's really just a matter of where should you start and what order. And so usually it's the ROT thinking process that I take people through.
It makes sense. We talk ROI. I mean, money you can make, earn, or, create again. Time, once it's spent, you never get it back. So this is a greater asset, of course. Okay, so if someone wants to...
with that though,
go ahead.
The parallel is you can spend money or you can invest money, and you can all do the same with time. Like, think of this as the same parallel. You can invest your time. You invest 3 to 5 hours, that yields 250. Time and money are really interchangeable.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's say now we get the book, we read the book. Can we learn about this in there, or is this something that we need to actually unpack now? If someone wanted to, for example, I look at my email, I've got maybe 20, 30 unread emails today. My executive assistant is on the case, but where would we start to organize the inbox?
One, I think the book takes people quite far. I mean, obviously, tools also, the book came out a bit more than a year ago. Tools have changed. We've adapted and figured out better ways since the book. But the book, it's not a fluffy book. It's pretty detailed, and it's not one of these books where it's like one concept for 300 pages. It's pretty packed and dense. HarperCollins was like, you can't have any more pages. So that's why throughout the book, there's URLs to bonus resources, because otherwise it would have been like 1,200 pages. But you can get pretty far with the book, but some people learn better when they, have a video course or like a live person, which is why we offer that. But the book takes you pretty far. And the starting point with anything is mindset. How should you think about email? And then also, when should you use email and when shouldn't you? And what's the purpose of email? Before you get into any technical features, you have to understand conceptually what you're dealing with. And so in the book, and what we teach is you think about email as an external to-do list that other people can add to. And just like how you want to get through your to-do list, you want to get through your email. So that's kind of the first thing. You have to reframe your mind. 2, the purpose of email should be external communication, with exceptions that you can forward an email if your team needs to see something. You shouldn't start a conversation with your team via email. So, you have to get kind of through those. And then, it builds, and there's other concepts. You should have a difference between your inbox, which is what you should do now, and then, have a place to put your not now. And so we teach this framework called RAD, reply, archive, defer. I could talk an hour about email, but at a high level, all these things, you have to start with understanding the purpose of the thing, when to use it, when not to use it, and how to think about it.
Okay, this is good. I like this. External email is external, and internal is what? We're talking Slack and so on. And I want to ask a question. When we talk about time, I know I'm really big on time. There's 168 hours of the week. We have someone like Richard Branson. He's, owns companies, 300 plus companies, and he's got services and, solutions that have impacted the entire world. Yet he has a lot of spare time to be with his family. What are the fastest ways to save time?
I think it really depends per person. I think email is a big one. I think there's also not just saving. Honestly, I would even say that it shouldn't even be thinking about saving time. It should be about optimizing time, because I think that the biggest, fastest time optimizations isn't necessarily saving time, but it's optimizing time. So think about all the time that is just dead space, wasted time. The back of an Uber where you're doing nothing, right? Or a walk and you're doing nothing. Now, sometimes it's good to do nothing. So I'm not saying every second needs to be filled. But if you're not getting joy from what you're doing and you're not doing something useful, then I have an issue with it. So, if you're not getting joy from the nothing, then I'm always wondering, how can we repurpose that nothing with something of value? And so one quick thing you could do is have your team send like pre-recorded videos, like Loom videos. Rather than having long meetings, maybe you could shorten your meetings by 15 minutes. And the asynchronous part, they send you Loom videos. And now you free up 15 minutes on your calendar. And now you make better use of that dead time that we all inevitably have, for example. That's like a quick one. Meetings is another big inefficiency. You could cut down on the meeting time via this, but there's other strategies you can do, like having agendas, having moderators, logging decisions, action items, things like that. Email is a big one. Then there's like scheduling tools. Scheduling's a big pain. On average, it's like 7.2 back and forth for 2 people to find a time. And it's exponentially more when there's groups. So, Calendly and other tools like that are great tools. I mean, there's a whole bunch. I think those are some general things, but then, each of us has our own inefficiencies to address.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching an interview with Ray Dalio, and they asked him, what made you successful and how did you get to where you are today? And he said, there's only one secret to my success. And that is that anytime I was not either 1, deeply passionate about something, or 2, world class at it, in terms
He
of a
said
skill
no.
set. Huh? Yeah.
He said no.
Yeah, exactly. He would say, I would find someone to do it faster, better, and cheaper. From my experience running many multi-million dollar a year companies, I have found that sometimes when I thought my staff members were, an 8 out of 10 on the skill level, they were maybe like a 2 or 3 or a 4 out of 10. And so it was expensive to have people not as skilled and as productive, and or I was trying to do it myself. What are your thoughts on building, scaling both money, time, and impact by recruiting, hiring, and actually restructuring potentially businesses to make sure we get much more efficiency out of it? What are some of the things that you've seen with the companies that you've consulted for?
I always advise hiring as a last resort, not a first resort. If you have someone that leaves, whether you fire them or they quit, something that I found to be really helpful is sit in the pain for 1 to 2 weeks and don't be in a rush to just go and hire someone. People hire, no one wants more bodies. People want more capacity. At the end of the day, leverage and everything I do, I'm in the business not of efficiency, but of capacity. At the end of the day, that's the benefit people want is more breathing room, more capacity to do what they need to do. So if you can suffer through a little bit and not just be in a rush to do kind of what the obvious strategy of go and hire, which is almost like I don't want to say lazy, but that's like the lazy approach almost of solving the capacity. What I always find is, one, there's some percentage of that person's job that was unnecessary that you can just completely cut. Then there's another percentage where it's, hey, this person, I can't believe this $100 an hour person was doing $10 an hour work for another 20% of their job. Let's give that to someone offshore, someone cheaper. Then there's another percentage where, hey, we don't even need to give it to a person of any hourly rate because automation mixed with some AI can do it, right? So when you start like adding it up, I think it's a really good exercise. Like I always try to hire as a last resort. How can we either cut something, optimize something, use AI, use automation, and then see what's left? And in some cases, you do have to hire. It really changes the strategy around hiring when it's more of a last resort and you really force automation and AI and better process. So I'm really all about maximizing revenue and profit per team member as like one of the key metrics of success. Mm-hmm. To me, it's not super impressive if someone doubled their revenue but tripled their team size, or I'd be much more impressed with a $10 million a year company with a team of like 10 than a $100 million company with a team of like 1,000.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. What are some of the most important tools to look at in terms of automation and AI in 2025 for companies of, different types of companies, but in general? What have you seen and what are you planning in your own businesses?
I think one of the most important skills of the future is just prompt engineering. So you don't have to be an AI or automation expert, but you do have to start understanding the capabilities of these things. And even if you're not the world expert, at least you have an understanding of what's capable. What you were saying before, my friend wrote a book called Who Not How, Ben Hardy. Kind of reminded me a bit of what you were saying with Ray Dalio. You don't have to know how to do everything these days. You just have to be good at finding the who. Oftentimes now, though, the who is a technology or a piece of technology or an automation. It's not a physical human. So that who doesn't matter if it has a pulse or no pulse. It's just cheaper if it doesn't have a pulse. But I think having an understanding of prompt engineering, like you have to be able to understand like how to use ChatGPT on a basic level. I think that if you want to take it one step beyond, it's not that hard to create custom ChatGPT. There's a crazy amount of value that you can generate for your business by creating custom GPTs for specific. So I'll give you an example. There's this guy that I'm working with right now. I've known him for years. His name's Dean Jackson. He's a marketing guru genius.
Yeah, Dean is amazing. Wasn't he the founder of the one-page landing page or some shit?
Yeah. So we're doing some collaboration right now. And I was asking him about, the guy is like a savant with email marketing stuff.
Like you are with chess.
I don't know about that. The guy's great. Anyway, I had a webinar. Sometimes we do these webinars, and we were doing a webinar, building a second brain for your business or something like this, or optimizing your meetings, whatever it was. And I was asking Dean, what do you think of this subject line? What do you think about the body of this? And I could have left it there and, got the better subject line and been done. But I had custom GPT opened up, and I have this mindset of like, how do we build an asset? How do you do an extra 20%, but it builds an asset and doesn't just solve that one problem, but I solve every problem. So I was with the mindset of solving this email subject line and body copy. I sat with him and he had a bunch of material. So like I uploaded his material I created a custom GPT for the Dean Jackson subject line GPT. and then another one for the marketing body copy. And I uploaded some of his material. I gave it some prompt. It gave an answer. And then I was sitting with him and I was like, what do you think? And he was telling me, oh, well, I wouldn't do this because it's like too long or it's not direct enough or whatever it was. He told me a bunch of stuff. And I guess my long-winded point here is I could have just taken it in the moment and fixed the one email and been done. Instead of that, I was updating the instructions to a custom GPT prompt with literally only an extra 20% effort. He would do that, and then I'd run it back through, get a new one, and we only did 3 cycles. By the 3rd cycle, it was like, damn, this is really good. And guess what? I have an asset now, and I don't need to call Dean for my next email. I've got a GPT that has been trained on a lot of his PDFs / fine-tuned off of some back and forth. And that extra 20% has now yielded me this asset. And so think in your business, how many of these opportunities you have. We have these for marketing email subject lines, marketing body. We have them for subject lines of an Inc. article. Each one of these things has unique characteristics that justify creating a custom GPT. So I think that into 2025, you're going to start seeing a lot more companies having dozens or hundreds of these specialized bots that you build and train. I'd much rather train a bot than a person. They're never going to quit on you, get sick, complain, etc. So I think in terms of asset creation and value creation, we'll see a lot more of that. Zapier is a classic in the automation space. Some of the tools that we are heavy on the training and consulting, one is Asana. They're coming out with AI Studio. So the cool thing with that going into next year is they've always had what they call a workflow builder where you can kind of string together these automations and you update the custom field of this task to a certain field and then automatically all these things happen and someone's assigned and something's moved. Now with the AI Studio, it could do a lot more interesting things where it could automatically, a task comes into a certain project, it can understand the task and it can understand that it needs an account manager, and it could understand who the account managers are in your organization, who has bandwidth, who would be the most appropriate, and then it'll automatically assign it to that person. The sky's the limit with what you could do here. You could submit a request to write an article and you could almost like kind of fully automate the process of it. So that's pretty cool. We're also big into Coda. It's another one of the big tools that we train on, and they're coming out with Coda Brain. It's just mind blowing. Like that one, you can connect all the different data sources that you use and start just doing general queries. And it could be something like, hey, show me a report of all the deals that we closed the last quarter. And you connect it to your CRM and it'll like build you a graph. It's just really, we're living in such an interesting time, and these tools are changing so fast. It's hard even for us to keep up on updating all the content with all this AI stuff. But you don't need to be an AI expert. You just have to be aware of some of the basics and understand some of the capabilities, and then do the who, not how. Hire someone that knows it. You just have to be aware that you need that skill set.
I love that. Okay, so now I think a lot of people are going to be researching how do we make what did you say, custom GPTs?
Yeah.
Custom GPTs. I love that. Okay, so now if we're looking at this, at what point do you think, Nick, we're going to see, someone like an AI bot replacing a virtual assistant?
I have a virtual assistant. I mean, you should always start with the lowest hanging fruit. So if you're paying someone $100 an hour, it's more important to start with focusing on clearing up the tasks that they're doing that could either be automated, given to a VA, or given to an AI, right? Because that's costing you the most. Don't dismiss also doing a similar exercise with your VA. We have a VA, but I don't want her doing things that I can automate or use AI to do, right? One, it's just a waste, even if the hourly rate's lower. But 2, there's a capacity constraint. And every minute that she's doing something that's kind of useless, it's a minute away that she's not doing something that right now AI can't solve.
Such as picking up the phone and calling a client, etc. So do you ask ChatGPT or whatever AI tool to create a training for the virtual assistant? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. What's the first step? Because now I can imagine our listeners and viewers are going, okay, good. I've gone into AI. I've learned a bit, but I have certainly optimized it. So where do we start in that regard?
Where do you start with AI?
Yeah, and optimization in general. Apart from reading your book and continuing to learn about these principles, how to free up ROT, etc.
Well, something that you can do, there's a tool called Loom that is just a screen recorder. Super simple.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can always start just by recording everything that you do. So then
Mhm.
it makes it easy to then hand off to someone and say, what parts of this do you think you could do? And everything's a win. Say you do some complex process and there's 100 steps. Even if you can get 10 off your plate, it's still not that you've gotten the whole thing off, but you have to celebrate the small wins. Like even 10 steps out of 100, that's huge. So don't dismiss some of those micro efficiency gains. The fastest thing and easiest low friction thing you could do is start recording, and then that way at least you have a starting point to share. And I would just start also, I think just psychologically, you get so used to doing something in a certain way, and you get so used to suffering that you don't even realize sometimes that you don't need to suffer or do it anymore. So I think just even once a quarter, just having like a reflection exercise where you really sit back and you're like, what aspects of what I'm doing don't give me joy, don't tap into my unique superpower. List them out, think about it, and then if you can't figure it out, ask Chat GPT.
Well said. I love this. I think that's exactly what I've done for coming into the new year, exactly what I can automate, delegate, and accordingly celebrate. When I look at this in my reality, I think it's common for people to get stuck in that. So I think this exercise is good. Sit down, listen to this interview, pause it, and write down what is not inspiring to you, what is taking a lot of your time that doesn't have a good ROI or an ROT, and see what you can do to get that off your plate. Okay, well, what are your top 3 tips for entrepreneurs that want to scale, apart from the things that we've already discussed? Obviously, top 3 tips.
Sometimes the strategy to scale 100x over 3 years is a totally different strategy than to double or 10x in a 1 year period. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. And so something that oftentimes so many people fall into this trap where you're short-sighted just trying to grow your top line and you put all your effort into sales marketing, you neglect this foundational level. And at some point you're going to hit this breaking point where you just can't get past it. So sometimes slowing down and investing some portion of time and energy into the foundations, these operational efficiency foundations, even though it might not be, learning, rolling out Asana or these types of tools, you're not going to see more P&L in the bank next month, right? That's the challenge. Versus you hire a sales consultant, you add an SDR, that should show you money in the bank next month. And so that lack of visibility of money in the bank is the hard part conceptually with wrapping your head around this. But if you're really a longer term thinker, longer term strategist, not investing in those systems and processes, you are going to hit a breaking point. And I think sometimes even if it's allocate 20% of resources to that foundations, I think that's going to be 10, 100, 1,000 times you're going to have more growth potential than if you're just 100% focused on revenue. So that's kind of the first. Well, we've talked about it, but I think the ROT, figure out what's going to maximize your ROT. And the framework that we teach, the CPR framework, I think that you need to have an aligned team. Everyone needs to know how to work together. The world's changing fast and what you do might change. But if you have a team that knows how to work together and you can turn on a dime and, hey, all of a sudden something happened and we got to change something. If you've got a team that understands how to work together very efficiently, you're going to be very resilient and agile, and you're going to be able to adapt to this very fast changing world.
So if you want to write down the steps, I think this is really important. What are your main focuses for 2025 in your business and your life?
Well, I just launched a new company that is taking up a decent amount of time right now. So this new company is one aspect. I have a mastermind group as well. And so that's another kind of key area of focus. We do these events, in-person events. On the leverage side, we've got these new programs that we're launching where we do these quarterly in person. So between all the businesses, there's a few new things that have been in the works that we're excited to launch. Scaling the speaking side of the business. After the book, speaking has become, quite a significant revenue stream / it's a way that we get business. So a key area of focus is growing the speaking business. On a personal, I used to be a swimmer, and randomly in June, I was challenged to see if I could just cold turkey jump in a pool and do a race. And I did quite well and qualified for my age group for nationals. And so now thinking about actually properly training and doing nationals, we're not talking Olympics, right? We're talking like in the 40 to 45-year-old old fart bucket, but yeah, getting back into swimming, staying on top of health is another objective. And I just moved into a new apartment in New York, and I've been traveling a ton. I traveled way too much. I was on the road like 50% of the time. I'm really looking forward to traveling less in 2025, and really just for the events that I'm throwing and a few other kind of fun things. But other than that, really being more intentional with staying in New York.
I love it.
What about you?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've signed some international contracts. I've done the similar thing to you. I used to own a franchise of health clinics, and then I started speaking in one of my clinics, and 105 people showed up, and I've been doing it ever since. So for me, it's doubling down on corporate wellness, really helping large corporations with wellness and optimization for their people, and also speaking on the big stages next year. I love speaking from stages. One of the best ways to give value, and also one of the best ways, as you mentioned, to generate prospects interested in the work. So
it's the best.
The public speaking side of things is huge.
With the corporate wellness, what does that look like?
So what I do specifically is health and peak performance by helping people see what the individual need is. So most people's individual needs are physical health, mental health, and emotional health. And that's where we're really good. So we do a series of tests, as I say, the tests that your GPs never, or your MDs never even heard about, which is, the epigenetics test, understanding your profiling, understanding human design, understanding what drives the individual, understanding their values, their core needs, their biggest problems. And then we tailor customized programs for the different staff and also for the leadership team and the exec team. And then we measure it, before, during, and after to reduce and see improvements in absenteeism, presenteeism, and stuff like that. And so it's basically doing a pivot from doing, large scale events, which I've been doing for years, to actually focusing more on B2B.
I love what you do, and I believe in all of that. One of the guys in my mastermind group, his name's Donald Schrump, not Trump. He was my performance coach, and then I brought him into the group. And he works with some of the world's top athletes. And if you don't have your health, you have nothing, right? And
yeah.
If you feel good, I've suffered from degenerative disc, herniated disc, all these problems. Like luckily, no terrible health conditions, but still, talk about the amount of time that dealing with the pain and having to go to a doctor / being distracted because you're in pain or you're not feeling your best. Huge productivity loss if you're not healthy. So super believe in it. Now I've been doing all those tests too. Can't see it, but I got red light panels that he's had me buy and a whole bunch of other cool gadgets. But ice baths and all that type of stuff are huge.
That's it. And, we talk about peak performance and you have a successful company, but most of or at least a lot of the employees aren't mentally doing well. There's a big mental sickness, epidemic happening now. And this is where we can really not only capitalize for ourselves, but help a lot of people. So that's my main focus for next year. I've got two last questions for you, please. Second last question is, we've got Come Up For Air. Write this down, everybody. ComeUpForAir.com. Just give me the two top benefits that a person will get when they read this book, please.
I think the benefit that they're going to get is it's going to have them completely rethink all the different core tools that they are or not using. And it's going to give them a framework that they can start using immediately that's going to help them save time. But then also if they hand it over to their colleagues, it's like speaking a language. So then they're going to be able to work a lot better with their colleagues. And it's really a playbook. It's not, like I said before, one concept that I just dragged on for 200 pages with different stories. It is a really tight, packed with actionable tips and tricks that they'll take away immediately to save time. So that's what you'll get out of it.
Epic. And go check out the website, Come Up For Air, everybody, because there's lots of amazing free resources on there too. I can see there's one Inbox Zero resource that you've added there. We
spent so many hours on the bonus resources. Like I said, HarperCollins was like, hey, you literally can't do anymore. The hack that we had was throughout the book. It's like, hey, if you want to see the playbook for this, the checklist for this, the resource for this, go to comeupfair.com. So we put a lot of time into the free resources.
I love it, man. Thank you for doing that. And my last question to you is straight off the cuff. And it goes like this. I want you now to imagine, Nick Sonnenberg, that you are on the world stage. Every sentient being alive has gathered, watching, tuning into your message to the world. Take a breath, take your time. And when you're ready, please, sir, do tell, what is your message to the world right now?
Every second counts.
Boom. Nick Sonnenberg, everybody. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think we're ending on a good note. Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
It's a pleasure, mate. Thank you for sharing these amazing tools and helping us with efficiency and impact. It's really appreciated. And have a beautiful day in the Big Apple.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
See you, bro.